Labra fóir scach ní go sóil Sgamar de slione gui suspir Vivian go glor.
Now, we will talk of Peggy, who died recently. And I remember when this plaque or whatever was unveiled publicly, she was here. Kathleen says this was 1996. Jesus, they passed very quickly. But anyway, she was here, and she was in good form, you know, very good form, and it was clear she was very happy to be here and to be part of this. So I went up to her, and I said to her, "Do you know what your father said about you when you were born?" She was a month premature, I noticed, when she was born, but no, she says, I don't think I came across that. Well, I've written it out, says I, out of his letters. And what he said was, physically, she is the image of her mother. But I am afraid that she is born with my temper and restlessness. God help her suitors. And the husband was over there, and she went over to him, and she said, "Do you see what Dad wrote about me?" And she read it out for him, and she said, and the husband says, "And wasn't he right?" Anyway, she was a good woman too, and I didn't realise at that time that she was a revolutionary too. I didn't realise that at all, but it's since her death that certain pieces of information have come in about her, which are interesting. They're quite short, but I'll read out a few things about her in English now this time. It says here, one person says, Pegeen was an extremely active campaigner on progressive left-wing and Irish Republican issues in England, at a time when it was not all popular or even particularly safe to publicly express their views, never mind campaign on them. I didn't know that. She was a regular contributor to the Irish Democrat, for which she wrote articles and book reviews. The Irish Democrat was an official publication of the Connolly's Association, an Irish Republican organisation based among Irish immigrants in Britain. She also acted for a time as secretary of the Camden Irish Forum in the 1990s, where the forum petitioned the local council to allow Sinn Féin rent office space in the district. Peggy and her husband, Christy O'Sullivan, proudly wore Easter lilies each year in memory of all those who died for Irish freedom, and they were central to the campaign opposing what Pegeen called the draconian Prevention of Terrorism Acts brought in by the English Labour government in the 1970s. Pegeen was also very active with Fuascals, an organisation established to campaign on behalf of Irish Republican political prisoners in England. One of the major campaigns she was involved in, for example, was the campaign demanding an independent public inquiry into the police execution of young Irish Republican Diarmuid O'Neill in Hammersmith, London, in 1996, as it happened. And among the Irish political representatives who wished to honour Pegeen's lifelong support at her funeral were Maurice Quinlivan, who was a TD for Sinn Féin in Limerick City, Joe Dwyer, head of the Sinn Féin London office, and Pete Middleton and Sheila O'Connor from the London Wolf Tone Society. So she was very active. Now, Kathleen did a very generous thing, I think, and a very noble thing, and we're very proud of the fact and very thankful to her for going over to her wake and funeral, I think it was. And you said, Kathleen, that it was an interesting funeral.
Yes,
Tell us.
I'll be talking about it in a minute.
Yeah, okay, very good. Just give us an idea of what was happening. Agus Máirtín, Máirtín will write about his memories of her, when she visited here, or whatever you want to say, Máirtín. Who's going to stop you anyway?
Who goes first?
Okay.
Tá anahas orm a bheanse inniu chun labhart Pegeen O'Sullivan, iníon le Liam Ó Flaithearta. Bhí Seamus Cashman an fáilte le bheanse ach foríor ní raibh sé an teacht ag an ómant éarnach. Bhfuil mé le Pegeen I 1971 turas go dtí an rúis. Bhí Frank Edwards ón Irish USSR Society I gceannas ar an turas. Tháinig mocht leis Sean Edwards go dtí an éile go rialta. The group consisted of firemen from Athlone, miners from Glasgow, and a few individuals, including Pegeen O'Flaherty. My memory of her is that of a very elegant lady, dressed in a bright cotton dress and a straw hat. She spoke fluent Russian and was very companionable to all the group. We visited St. Petersburg, Leningrad as it was then, Kiev and Yalta. In Kiev, we attended a Russian Orthodox service which lasted for at least 2.5 hours. Pegeen remained devoutly standing while we escaped the heat. Pegeen was born in London in 1922. Her mother was the writer Margaret Barrington, who was married to Liam. During her time in London, Pegeen became godmother to over 50 Orthodox children. According to one of her godchildren, Veronica Davies, Pegeen's parents had chosen to send her to a Quaker boarding school in Saffron Walden, where they thought Pegeen would have the least risk of religious indoctrination. Pegeen was baptised into the Anglican Church in 1949. One of her friends at the Quaker school married an Orthodox priest, and this family nurtured Pegeen in the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church became Pegeen's sanctuary in life. She learned Russian from a member of that family and mastered the language in 6 months. Pegeen was employed by the British Council as a Russian interpreter, as well as doing bookbinding at home. In one of his letters to Kitty Tyler, Liam recalls her sending a whole lot of bound Maupassant books, and I have never written to acknowledge their arrival. I must be the most appalling father in Europe. Pegeen married Christy O'Sullivan in the mid-1970s. Christy was born in Cork and immigrated to London at a young age. It was an extremely happy marriage. During that time, she was very happy also to meet her half-sister, Joyce Rathbone, and they became great friends. Pegeen and Christy were both politically active, as Jo has mentioned, and their photograph appeared in the front page of the Morning Star newspaper, protesting about Margaret Thatcher's poll tax. But Christy suffered from Parkinson's disease and unfortunately he died. Pegeen continued to live in Camden until 2018 when she moved to a care home in Crewe. The first evening she arrived, a Great Gatsby Christmas party was in progress. Pegeen took to the dance floor and stole the show. Her time at the Belong Crewe care home was legendary. She partook in all the activities. A staff member, Sandra Ball, there described her as flamboyant and dramatic in communication. She enjoyed witty and articulate banter, even though she was living with advanced dementia. The people Pegeen became involved with at the Crewe care home said that every interaction with her was memorable, with her vivid and lively personification of everything she saw. Such a passion with words. Pegeen could describe a dead, smelly fish and make it sound the most exciting thing you ever saw. Where did she get that from? Of course, she adored her father. People were drawn to her and her colourful view of life touched many lives. And again, I quote from Sandra Bull. If ever you saw Pegeen listening to Ave Maria, it would blow you away to see how visibly she was moved every time. She found a spiritual place to go when she saw nature, such as the sun set in the evening, the swaying of trees, the sunshine and the beauty of it all. She, of course, wrote some short stories herself. 3 years ago, in August 2019, as we were preparing for the Féile that year, contact was made with me by Bernard Clark, presenter of The Blue of the Night on Lyric FM. Bernard Clark informed me that a friend of his, Alan Dunn, a reader in art and design at Leeds Beckett University, was working at the Belong Crew care home to develop an audiovisual project to support elderly people on their dementia journey. During an early visit to Crew, Alan Dunn spotted a lady who sat alone reading The Guardian. Staff told him her name was Pegeen and she was relatively new and an arty type, they informed him. That was all I needed to hear, Alan informed me in his email. Alan Dunn sat and chatted with Pegeen about travel and photography, and then she said to Alan that her father had done some writing. She and a member of staff showed Alan to her room and a collection mostly of art history and Liam O'Flaherty's books. Of course, the Pegeen that Alan met was the daughter of Liam O'Flaherty. In an email to me, he wrote, "I will confess to not being overly familiar with Liam's writing, but I did research and bought some books, including his short stories. I began reading them and revisited Pegeen, and I was taken by how Liam introduced each character by describing their eyes. The notion of a project was beginning, less about dementia and more about Pegeen." And the eyes that does the looking. And some ideas about eyes staying the same when other parts of the body fade. Alan started extracting and printing out eyes section from Liam O'Flaherty's work and invited Pegeen to read them for him. Alan in his email continued, "Pegeen had such an expressive voice, incredible imagination and a real sense of play. I've since been offering some of these recordings to artists and musicians around the world to remix them, either providing some music as layers of or composing using Pegeen's voice." Alan Dunn hoped that he would celebrate the extraordinary tale of O'Flaherty's two daughters, Joyce Rathbone and Pegeen O'Flaherty. Many of you know that Joyce Rathbone, the daughter of Liam O'Flaherty, was a highly regarded musician. Alan Dunn proposed to include in the project Joyce Rathbone's performance of Mozart's Sonata in A from a BBC Home Service broadcast in 1958, and to also include a talk given by her on BBC Radio 3. I think there's another page. In responding to Alan Dunn, I have told him that the proposal to work on a new composition based on Pegeen's readings and her father's work and to press up a limited edition vinyl record would be of great interest to our Liam and Tom O'Flaherty Society. However, COVID got in the way and the project lost momentum. There's some hope we may be able to gain some momentum again about it. I attended Pegeen's funeral in Shrewsbury. The funeral of Pegeen O'Sullivan was a memorable occasion. The Orthodox service was extremely spiritual. It was held in a small Orthodox church on the outskirts of Shrewsbury. The funeral was led by two Orthodox priests, with prayers also being sung by a male and female voice. The gathering of over 50 people stood with lighted candles while her body lay exposed in a wicker coffin. There was an intimacy about the event which I've never before experienced at a funeral. The Orthodox priest announced at the beginning of the funeral that it was not a celebration of the life of the dead person. Rather, it was a reminder that death isn't the end, but the beginning of a new journey. The funeral service ended with the priest incensing the coffin from the turable censer with close friends kissing the body of Pegeen goodbye. The body was taken for burial at Elm Street Cemetery for prayers and committal to the earth. The regard and devotion in which Pegeen was held by her Orthodox friends and others was strong and very, very touching. The evening ended with food and wine in a restaurant overlooking the Severn River. Various people gave accounts of her life and tributes were paid to her by close friends. On display were photographs and memorabilia of her life, including some short stories she had written. The variety of people was impressive. The organisation of the funeral was done by her two friends, Angus Melville and Veronica Davies, who is her goddaughter. Again, I would like to quote from what a friend said at that, at the end of, or who said at that celebration of her life. Although Pegeen spent most of her life in England, she remained Irish at heart, and her love of the little things that God has bestowed upon earth surely came from the barren island of her father, and the mentality of the early Celtic saints who inhabited that self-same corner of the world. Van Féile a Bahi, Conceanainn dia grosa iri, ni bheidh a lehéad irisht an. Gur míle maithagwibh, tá cópanna de greengrafna agus a goman seo a thug mé a bhí artas bond ag an béile in na socrata agus den socrat féin mas mí éanana breanúra.
Very nice.
Go hán.
Bola bus go Kathleen. I think it was a great touch that she got over there. I do. Máirtín aber mach na ganin ki to go do sa chan wa han chin. Máirtín, a close relative, of course. He ran out of paper.
Yeah. Pegeen Nic Mhathúna. Pheigín O'Sullivan Pheigín O'Cuaig the tech and gCapall. Shepshin Arara Shamoran, the Van and Liam. With the male fetish to ring paint of him. With the two steps on Felon's Club. Skehiulemach of Pegeen agus Christie. When she does London, let Takich the lady were so nationally error well fetish. Every Féile rig, each origin. You can see you. The Queen of Winner of the Via, Tarloons, it's not sure home. Omala Sima Veke, and course in Hayden, the Obereke, Mar Ashty Road, and Rushish. Niels Agon Ked the Capachi, when two faster ties show like a horse, egg Narushi, so no crannish. Never.
Yeah.
Canada.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have remembered her. Well.
Gan y brôn ysgotter a gael na reim. Lalmwyr y glorwr sy ged fi